Hello, I'm Kevin Denney. Welcome to the Hong Kong World's 2027 podcast. I'm joined today by my crewmate Bram Van Olphen on D59, who's also the chairman of the International Dragons Association. We also have Jamie McWilliam, one of Hong Kong's finest sailors, who finished third in the Fremantle Etchells Worlds this year. Let's get on with the show.
Gentlemen, thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting us.
Right.
Bram, tell us about the dragon community here in Hong Kong.
The Dragon class is probably the backbone of the club. I think we are the oldest class boat that is still around. The fleet has gone, like with many fleets, has had its ups and downs. But in the last 20 years, we've seen that the fleet has found its footing. We have 22 boats actively sailing, and with the Worlds coming to Hong Kong, we start seeing people getting interested in buying newer equipment, newer boats, which gives us also on the race course a lot more action. Racing is getting closer. We see that from the Hong Kong Dragon class, there is a lot of push to try and improve the local sailors in preparation of the Worlds. So I think we are very positive about what is about to come in 2026.
How has the fleet grown over the years?
It is the third oldest fleet in the world for the Dragons. It started with several English gentlemen building dragons here in Hong Kong. That's 94, 95 years ago. Of course, during World War II, we saw that the fleet was completely gone. We brought in new boats. We brought in some boats from Indonesia that came from a Dutch fleet that was stationed in Jakarta, if I'm not mistaken. And as of the 1980s, our vice patron of the club and dragon sailor Lowell Chang started building dragons, which ended up being boats in Hong Kong, boats in Vancouver, and I think there's also a few still left in Manila. But he built, at that time, a very competitive boat, and I think it was the first boat that he built that then won the Worlds in Australia, if I'm not mistaken. But that helped grow our fleet, and that has been the core of our fleet. We've added newer boats. We've got some Dominic dragons here. We have some Petticrows here. So there is a lot of good equipment here.
You've been involved with dragons for years, and now you're chairman of the International Dragon Association. From that perspective, what makes Hong Kong special for dragon sailing?
I've not been involved for several years as a president. I've been vice chairman for 4 years, and since October last year or this year, I was elected chairman. Which is unique because I don't think there's ever been a Hong Kong sailor or a sailor from an Asian country that was president. But it shows that we are a real international class. We have 33 nations that have dragon fleets. We have in Asia a really fast-growing fleet, not only in Hong Kong, but even faster growing in Japan. We have a really sizable fleet in Australia. And we see across the border in Hong Kong, in China, that there is interest in dragon sailing as well. So from a dragon, international dragon perspective, I think that was one of the tasks that I took upon myself, is developing a class in China. We have had interest from Thailand to start a dragon fleet. and hopefully build out a sizable fleet that can start doing races on an Asian circuit. Which would mean that in Europe, I think you will now be able to sail Dragon every weekend if you want against really competitive people. Yeah. If we could try and emulate that in Asia, that would be really good for the class.
Jamie, you've been sailing in Hong Kong for many years. What brought you here and what keeps you on the water here?
Oh, well, I mean, my family business is sailmaking. So, my dad and mum founded a sail loft in Ireland in the early 70s. My brother is still a pro sailor. And so when I left college, I wound up sort of coming out here to do a regatta. And then a guy offered me a job. It was a standard early 90s Hong Kong story. Got into the sailing scene and, I've been involved ever since.
And what's different about sailing in Asia versus Europe?
Everywhere is a long way away from anywhere else. That's a really big thing about it. So it's incredibly important if you are a sailor in Hong Kong that the Hong Kong scene is vibrant, because going anywhere else to go sailing, it's a long, long way away. It's not like you live in London. If it isn't happening in the Solent, France is really close. The Netherlands is really close. Yeah. It's not a problem. If you want to go and race in the Med, even if you want to hop across the water to Miami, that's great. Here, it's not the case. And so as a result, I think that's one of the reasons why, the leadership of this club, the members of this club, work so hard to make sure that the sailing here is fantastic. And we're blessed with great waters, for the racing.
You just came off a podium finish at the Etchells Worlds in Fremantle.
A Corinthian podium finish, I'll be honest there now, lads. Had a couple of glamour moments, but the pro-am divide is strong.
Can you tell us what that experience was like?
Yeah, I mean, I think for anybody doing a World Championships of a Big One design class in Fremantle is a bucket list, thing, right? Whether it's a Dragon Worlds or a Etchells Worlds or a Flying 15 Worlds. Fremantle, 87 America's Cup, it's unbelievable. So it was a little bit intimidating because, the standard and the preparation time that people put in was staggering. But, Hong Kong has a pretty proud tradition of turning up at international events and doing relatively decently. And so we were really thrilled to go along and have a good time.
How did you prepare for that competition?
Well, I mean, we're lucky here in Hong Kong in that we've this fella called Mark Thornborough, who is a spectacularly top level Etchell sailor, and so we were able to spend a lot of time training up with him. But we went and did the Australian Nationals and several of the state events. We did Etchells events in the UK in the lead up. And then we headed off down there and hoped that we wouldn't get our noses bloodied too badly.
Was there anything you learned in Fremantle that you've brought back to Hong Kong?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that the top sailors are so focused on their process is something that we always try to, bring back here. There's no point thinking about the end goal. It's about the step-by-step approach to make sure you just keep doing the simple things well, keep the communication up, and really pay attention to the details. And all the guys that were winning down there, the guys that were beating us, they were never visibly quicker, but they were never visibly slower. It was that's the way. And I think that's going to be the same, for everybody here who's trying to get ready for the Dragon Worlds. We're all going to have to sharpen up. It's not going to be an 8-knot move around inside Port Shelter. We're going to be out of Clearwater Bay up against the best.
To both of you, what makes Dragon Racing special? For people who don't know the class, what is it about the boat that has attracted sailors for over 90 years?
It's a one design boat. So the challenge is you can hardly blame the boat, or at least the design. You can blame yourself, you can blame the communication in the boat or your preparation. which attracts really good sailors, which in turn attracts a lot of people that want to learn and see how they can sail more competitively. At least that's
Yeah.
for me.
No, I think you're spot on. I mean, although I've been mostly an Etchells sailor here, I mean, I did one class championships doing bow or middle for Carl Grebstad about whenever years ago. I think he was short of weight in particular. But I did some dragon racing back before I moved to Hong Kong, back in Ireland. And I think the thing about the dragon class is that nobody's keeping any secrets. You know, if you come into the dragon class fresh, there's a speed guide, there's a tuning guide, and anybody from the top all the way down through the class, you go and ask them a question, they'll tell you. And so as a result, you know, you can sort of get up to speed and start to make mistakes, you know, with everybody else, you know, pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's why I think for us, and I look at a few more sailors in Hong Kong, we see the sailors that go and take the effort to go abroad and practice, learn. They all come back and say the learning curve is really steep, but it's a friendly crowd and you really get better. And we see this on our starting line now as well. We have people that are really, really a lot better than they were a few years ago.
How is it possible that a 5 mile an hour boat can be exciting? And you know, the fact that my 23-year-old who has never did any sailing when he was a kid, you know, they were too busy doing team sports, etc. But has now got sort of hooked on it because the social scene at the club is so good. And he I think he was pleasantly surprised to discover that he was enjoying the racing, and so you know he's now sailing with me, you know, which is, you know, obviously, you know,
every father's dream.
Every father's dream. I'm sure it's not every son's dream.
Out of the podcast.
But when you're sailing a Dragon or an Etchells or, you know, like a really good, pure one design boat, the fact that you're going along at about 5 miles an hour means that if you're going 10% faster than somebody else, you're only going half a mile an hour, you know, gains or losses. And so you have to be unbelievably careful not to make mistakes or take too big risks, because your chances of getting it back are very, very low. And as a result, the fight for every yard to enable you to cross a guy, you know, etc., is proving, you know, really exciting to him. And I think it sort of reminded me of why, you know, racing dragons, etc., you know, is such a thrill.
We had this last weekend, because the club is blessed with a training center for youngsters from very young to national team level, and we had one of the performance coaches on our boat last weekend for the first time on a dragon, and he made a remark, and that's almost in line with what you're saying. He said we sailed roughly 4 hours last weekend, and we finished within 4 meters of each other with the top boats, and that's probably where the excitement comes from.
Yeah, completely.
What's the typical racing season like here? When do you race? What are the big events on the calendar?
Well, it seems it's longer than in Europe, and it's longer than in Australia. I think, quite honestly, I think it's the longest sailing season anywhere, right? You know, officially, right? Officially, you know, the regatta at the start of September kicks off the season, right? Because of the fact that in the, you know, and it runs through to the end of May. Those two regattas used to be called the opening regatta and the closing regatta, right? But now they're the autumn and the spring. Because in the summer months, June, July, August, it's very, very hot, very humid when the southerly sea breezes are in. It's typhoon season. When signal 3 is up, you know, that means a typhoon is within a couple of 100 miles and your insurance is invalid, which sort of destroys the racing program. So effectively, the 9-month season, you know, and I believe in an off season. You know, I think you need a break.
Yeah, But for most of the dragons, actually, in the off season, there is this summer series in Shelter where
Right.
our base is, which is really good. It's every other weekend, and you see then people, if there's no typhoon or no racing, on the other weekends go for restaurant runs, and the social part is really good because we have so much racing going on that there is very little time to do leisurely cruising, which is also fun with a location that has so many islands.
But that is a great thing about being up at Shelter Cove, you know, that location of the yacht club.
Yeah.
That you can, you know, as a cruising ground, I mean, it's fabulous.
Beaches, everything. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
For sailors thinking about buying or chartering a Dragon for the 2027 Worlds, what should they know about the boats available here?
Well, right now, there are probably no boats available because people are preparing for the Worlds. We have seen such a demand in the expressions of interest, which at a certain point hit 98 expressions of interest of, I think, 23 nations. That also meant that the Hong Kong fleet was getting worried that we had to do proper qualification races, and that we would maybe only have 8 Hong Kong Dragons that were allowed to race in the Worlds. So a lot of people have put a lot of time and effort in their boats to get them ready to race and be one of those 8. And I think within the fleet, we will try to bring all the boats that are not sailing up as charter boats. And we have made a deal with the Japan fleet and with Yanmar to charter some newer V6 and V5 Dragons and bring them to Hong Kong as well. We've had, that still does not bring you to a very big contingent of boats for charter like you would have in Europe. So we've also, from the beginning, focused on getting a really good deal in shipping your boats in. Now, since the Worlds is in November, you will not miss a great set of months in Europe, unless you do the winter series in the southern part of Europe. And we will aim to bring you back, or your boat back, either in southern Europe, so you can start the winter series straight away, or to Hamburg or Rotterdam, to give her some tender love and care for the season that will then probably only start somewhere in April, May.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Certainly having a boat that fits inside a 40-foot container is such an advantage.
Yes.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, having owned a boat that didn't fit inside one and seen the shipping cost, whew.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go back to the 40-foot, please.
Yeah.
Jamie, let's dive into what visiting sailors can expect from racing in Hong Kong waters. First, give us the big picture. What are the defining characteristics of sailing here?
Okay, you mean specifically for the Dragon Worlds in particular?
Yeah.
So the racetrack for the Dragon Worlds is at Clearwater Bay. It's off the east side of the new territories of Hong Kong. So it's about a 2-hour sail from the central part of the yacht club here in the harbour where we are right now, which is probably the piece of Hong Kong that people are used to seeing in pictures. So out where the racetrack is, it's a piece of water that is surrounded on 3 sides by the mainland and islands, and then has 2 very big gaps facing southeast and facing northeast, which is good because that's where the prevailing winds come from. We've had a bunch of really big regattas there. We've had a Flying 15 Worlds there. We've had an Etchells Worlds there. We've had Asia Pacific Championships, and the big boats, raced their major IRC rating regattas up there for a long time. the thing that we always hear from people especially from like pros and really serious international teams that go to these events all over the world, the thing that they love about the racetrack is that there always seems to be a passing lane. And on a given day, even with the same wind direction, the passing lanes can be different. Because, there's nothing worse than having it like a one-sided racetrack and the rich just get richer over the course of the day. And if you have a bad start and you're in the 40s, you're never getting out of the 40s. So what we saw at if I pick specifically the Etchells Worlds in 2015, that was won by Skip Diebold and John McLean over from the States, there was any number of boats that could have won that regatta, and it really looked up and down all the way through, and there were places caught on the last beat of the last race, that decided the series. So both upwind and downwind, I think that's a really big deal, especially in a big fleet, where you need to be able to find a way to pass without exposing yourself to too much risk. Typically, the breeze that we're going to get in November is from the north to northeast quadrant. And it'd be a big disappointment if it was in single figure knots. It'd be, I'd say 10 to 15 would be, the sort of lower end. And we've seen plenty of big breeze, days out there. It's not a flat water racetrack. It's a swell driven racetrack with reflection coming off the very steep, rocky hills around the track. So you sort of spend a lot of your time sailing in keep trying to go faster mode rather than autopilot, so to speak. You really have to work at it, and you can really see the people's concentration paying off, on the track. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a great piece of water, and every time that the international guys come here, or when we're going to have an event here, they check, is it at Clearwater Bay? And it is.
And what can sailors expect out of current and tide?
So fortunately, the current isn't a massive deal, especially for a fleet that's going to be as big as at the Dragon Worlds. You can't put yourself into the corners, that the racetrack doesn't fit into the corners. They'll have to find a nice open space. So the strongest bit of tide that ever runs across that racetrack is close to about 0.3 of a knot. For people who are used to sailing in, tidal situations, in Northern Europe or Western Europe, it's nothing like that. So we think little about the tide. We would just be watching the tide, for example, in terms of, a long distance ley line into the bottom mark, for example, would be a thing to check it out. But in general, it's much more of a wind thing than a tide thing.
And what about temperature and weather?
Yeah.
For the Europeans, this will be the better part, I think.
Yeah. So here we are now. It's the 11th of December, and so the air temperature today is about 23, and I can tell you that the water temperature is 23. Yeah. Having been in it yesterday. So yeah, even when there is a bit of a northerly thump, that comes through in November, December, the air might be a little cold and dry, but the water is still warm. It's that bizarre experience where you crash into a wave and a big spray comes over and everybody ducks and then realizes that the water's warmer than the air. So yeah, it's lovely. It's I don't know. I'd be shorty wetsuit, and a shirt, maybe a jacket, if it was like a light shore jacket or something, but nothing else.
Speaking of lovely, could you try to describe the scenery and the geography?
Surely you've got good skills at describing geography.
Most people that I bring there think it looks like a tropical destination, like Thailand, Vietnam, the islands, the stone formation. It's incredible.
Yeah. We actually had some guys out, some sailors out from the UK, and we went out on a boat trip on Tuesday, 2 days ago, and that's exactly the American guy who was on the boat was saying that it reminded him of like, PP Island and
Yes.
stuff in Thailand. I mean, there's Bluff Island, which is one of the big ones on the north edge of the racetrack. It's got a cave in it that goes all the way through the island, that you can swim through, etc. I mean, it's fantastic.
And why was this venue chosen over other potential venues in Hong Kong? Why is this the one for the Worlds? What's the...
Well, this is largely driven by the amount of length that we need on the course. This is the part in Hong Kong where we have the longest stretch of water from every single wind direction.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the rules are in the Dragon class on this, but for the specs for the World Championship playbook in the Etchells, you need to have, a 2-mile beat capability. And when they reset the traffic control schemes on the southern side of the island off Lama, where we have done also a lot of regattas, it basically boiled down to a pretty simple decision that Clearwater Bay was where we had to be because of the fact that finding a 2-mile leg was only available in a very small range of wind directions on the south side of Hong Kong Island. So up at Clearwater Bay, plus quite honestly, on the south side, it tends to be a left side track, right? There is a channel, there is a bend, whereas at Clearwater Bay, the tide is not a big deal and the wind is, very, very interesting.
The second advantage that you would have, but that is not why we chose it, is that the venue from where we sail, you sail out and you're basically within, 5 minutes sailing of the track?
Yes.
Which for a lot of people is also probably one of the better things. Normally you have to sail at least half an hour to an hour to get somewhere. Here you are right on the water, you can come back, and that means that the upper sail is also a lot nearer by.
We were very grateful about that fact when one of our crew went to the wrong clubhouse on day 2 of the championships. Anyway, we just about made the start, but it was if it had been Lama or somewhere else, then with the 1 hour sail to the racetrack, we'd never have got there. Yeah.
And a follow-up question about wind and wave conditions. Is there variation throughout the day?
Yeah, there is.
Generally?
Yeah. So, both the Dragon Champs, the Hong Kong Dragon Champs and the Etchells Asia Pacifics were held within 3 weeks of each other on the racetrack in November this year. And, I think the breeze ranged, there was at least a sort of 6 to 8 knot variation most days out there. One day there was a 40-degree shift right between race 1 and race 2 because it was a surprisingly hot day. But all the rest of it, there were, the breeze was within a sort of 20-degree band, and up and down a little over the course of the day.
And from a tactical perspective, what's the local knowledge that visitors need to know? What are the tricks to racing well?
Well, you'll have to come here to find out. I'm not sure that I'm not sure there's any hard and fast playbook about that. I mean, it's a northern hemisphere racetrack, therefore the breeze tends to go right, on a sunny day, it just follows it round. The forecast models here are pretty good, right? When you're in the harbor, for example, or inside port shelter, there's so much local influence, from the heat column from the aircon units here in the harbor or from the hills around shelter. That's a problem. But when you go out onto the Clearwater Bay racetrack, you're actually in the pure, predictable, wind. So the forecast models are good. So I think you can follow the forecast pretty reasonably, and smashing a corner is more likely to be more risk than reward. Going to a corner, towards a corner, is grand, but there always seem to be enough shifts back and forth that going all the way, is a bit of overkill.
Yeah.
There's no meaningful compression, for example, down the side of Nine Pin Islands or shadow, anywhere else. It's a pretty fair. I think that's one of the things, right? It's right there in front of you. There's no sneaky hidden secrets.
And even with the islands there's not real funneling going on. There is a little bit, but it's relatively.
Yeah. All I would say for one thing that has hit us for the last couple of years is that when you look upwind at the water and you think it looks darker on one side, just be really careful that it's not darker on that side because there's an island behind it. We made that mistake a couple of times.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
So to both of you, what do you think would be the biggest challenge for international sailors coming to race here for the first time?
With all the stuff you can do here off the water, getting in your boat at a reasonable time in good shape is probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah. It's I literally was thinking exactly that. Yeah, there's a lot to do, and so getting focused on the racing, would be important. I do think that if anybody is coming looking to feel that they sailed to their potential at the event, whether that's winning or not, it doesn't matter. Everybody has their little battles up and down the fleet. Any extra day you can fit in before the event to go out there and actually experience the, maybe that there's a little bit of asymmetry in the waves compared to what you're used to in a sort of standard, swell, or getting used to a little bit of the reflection of the waves, would, especially downwind, would be a really, really good use of their time.
Okay, and Bram, from an organizational standpoint, what's your vision for Dragon Worlds 2027? What are you planning that will make this championship special?
Well, the Asian slot for the Worlds comes around every 8 years. And we tried 2 times before to get this slot, so we know it's a one-off, most likely. We have a really good club. We have a supportive government that wants to push sailing. So all 3 factors are converging for us to make this a really exceptional event. Whether it's on the water, we have probably one of the better race offices here with a fully staffed crew. We have purchased robo-marks specifically for this event and the Etchells that are coming after us. So in terms of equipment, whether it's support boats, everything, we are trying to make sure that it's top-notch, because we want people to come here and really also go back and say this was one of the events that you had to be. We've had a few of those in the Dragon class. We had, I believe, Antigua, where people were coming back and saying this, if you missed this, you missed something. We had this in Uruguay, and I think 2 years ago we had it in Japan, in Biwako. So the bar is set pretty high by those events, but we want to try and at least show everybody that we can host a really top-notch event.
And what's the expected fleet size?
Well, if the expressions of interest are anything to go by, we had 98, 22 nations. When we started out, we looked at the world championships that were held in Asia Pacific, which were the closest one that was in Australia. The fleet size there was around 50 boats, so that was our aim. If we are over 70 boats, I think we can be pretty proud of ourselves. But there are a lot of people around us that are saying you could probably push well over 70 boats.
And can you talk a moment about the social program?
Yeah, so what we have tried to do is when it was driven by the expressions of interest where people also indicated how many partners and friends were coming. And we started seeing pretty quickly that there were a lot of Corinthian sailors signing up that probably saw this as a one-off event, because there were also 3 partners coming along with a crew of 4. So we focused with a group of, I think the committee is about 8 people now, on putting together a really good social calendar, showcasing everything in Hong Kong, from cooking classes to museums. We have had requests for children to come along. Now, Hong Kong boasts a really top-notch aquarium. We have a Hong Kong Disneyland. So I think it brings together everything. And for the sailors, once they come off the water, which takes from the race course, as we said, to the venue probably 5 minutes, we will make sure that they have refreshments waiting for them. We have already signed up a really nice gala location right downtown Hong Kong. It can house 750 people, but we are hopeful that we will we won't make 750, but we'll get probably around 400 or 500 people in there, with a really good menu set forth, and we're going to just make sure that everybody has a really good time when they're just on the water or off the water.
And to Jamie, if you were giving advice to a dragon sailor from, say, Europe or Australia who's thinking about coming to Hong Kong for the Worlds, what would you tell them to focus on their preparation?
Not flat water sailing, I would have said. Making sure that your, whatever your settings are for acceleration, is a really important thing. Also, not just because it's Hong Kong, but because it's going to be a 75-odd boat start line, you need to get off the line, right, for sure. So any starting practice, is going to be a really big deal. That was a big determinant of success, when we had the Etchells Worlds here.
And to both of you, what are you each most excited about for this event?
Well, I think the funny thing is, I think the club is really excited about this event. Everybody in the club is really excited about this event. What I enjoyed, I turned up to do the Dragon Hong Kong Championships, a few weeks back, although not a dragon sailor. And I'll be honest, I sort of, I turned up with a little bit of trepidation, because this is, although it's a massive yacht club, right? It's still, shifting cross classes in your home club. It's not a very frequent thing, but I was really, really, really delighted at how welcome we felt, my crew and I, at that event. So I thought that was, I think that gave me a really good vibe about the entire thing. Because I know that when internationals go to an event, even if they're uber serious, they're not just going for the racing. They want to feel that welcome and that feeling that people are thrilled that you're here. And I think everybody's going to get that, which is great.
Yeah, I think for me, but then I look at it a little bit also from the club perspective, who is really supportive of this event. In our fleet, we have quite a large contingent of younger people. We train lots and lots of youngsters on a yearly basis. And for them, because the distances are so big, if you want to sail internationally in a Dragon, to have all these really good sailors come here and for them to be able to sail against them, I think that's massive.
Yeah, that's right.
No?
It is. You're dead right. Like the old analogy that, if you're a golfer, you don't get to play golf against Tiger Woods.
Correct.
But, you're going to get to turn up at the Dragon Worlds and, get your hat handed to you by some really good guys. Now, I'm not saying I'd want them here every weekend, but it's an astonishing experience to go out there and race against the best guys and discover how pleasant and helpful they are.
Yeah, be able to have a beer with them afterwards and ask them for some tips.
Yeah.
This is priceless for a lot of these younger people that want to get into class sailing.
Yeah, fantastic.
Well, how can sailors from around the world connect with the Hong Kong Dragon community and start preparing now?
Well, I think we've put up the registration, will be put up tomorrow, so people can start registering. But we've had this expression of interest list. We've had, as I said, quite a few people already reach out. We've tried to allocate people to then communicate with them, help them out on things like where do I stay, is there any problem with visas, which is in Hong Kong not an issue. What about taxes if I bring my boat in, which is not an issue because Hong Kong is a free port. To practical stuff about bringing in sales, bringing in other little things. So we are trying to make sure that everybody is assisted with coming here.
Before we wrap up, any final thoughts or advice for sailors considering making the trip to Hong Kong in 2027?
Well, the event's still a year away, so if you haven't actually been here and done any sailing, we're going to be sailing non-stop from here until the Worlds. Yeah. And if anybody wants to come out and, go for a sail, they don't have to bring their own boat, they don't have to bring their gear. If they just want to, see what it's like out on the water, then, we love when people come through town.
Yeah, correct. And I think that there have been people already trying to connect, see if they can have a spot on a Dragon. I think our fleet has been very receptive. We have, I think, 2 people from abroad, one from Italy and one from Estonia, coming for the Round the Island race that we have this weekend. Just to feel the vibe at the club. And I think there is no excuse not to come. I think we've made it in such a way, package-wise, for logistics, for everything. There's no reason not to come.
That's right. It's the famous line that a guy told me here about, 10, 15 years ago. The only bad thing about living in Hong Kong is that you don't get to visit Hong Kong.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to close this out. Thank you, guys. Bram, Jamie, thank you so much for sharing your insights today. This has been fantastic. So for everyone listening, this is the first in an ongoing series leading up to the Dragon Worlds 2027. We'll be talking with coaches, sailors, race management, and others in the Dragon community over the next year. You can find more information about the event at dragonworld2027.com. And if you want to learn more about REGATTAFLOW, visit regattaflow.io. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the water.